How was the tour, guys?
I really enjoyed myself. Had a really good time.
Yeah.
And that's what matters, as the man says.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think it was a success. UK has been good to us the last couple of years. Um, yeah, we played some amazing shows. London was pretty amazing,
Nice,
and
nice.
yeah. So I think the main thing is we really enjoyed the crack and the company of doing it. It was very easy. There was no major issues, and
It was a
you
very
know,
stressful tour, actually. There was nothing that was like, you know.
yeah, it was what we saying stress free.
Well,
Yeah.
my like say getting like most of the venue, like when we finished the gig, most like last time we had to drive like 2 hours to like the hotel or travel lodge or have you, but this time most of them were only like a 20-minute drive, which was nice. That's my version of stress free, is in like, we have to check into the travel lodge at like 3 a.m. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, you do hate that.
I
But yeah,
hate it.
no, look, it worked pretty well. Like we had a pretty great tour manager.
Yeah.
It was me. It was me.
Well, I assume this is just the beginning with the release of Bats and everything. You guys are definitely, going to be on the road a lot. Now I'm just curious about the record. How long has this been in the works?
Long time. How long's it been
Long
out?
time?
2 years.
2022, most of the effort was taken in, if I remember. I could be wrong, but
We were writing at the start of 2022, though, weren't we?
yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of two. It's 2 years all in. We took a while to record it because a few things happened. Domo had a baby, and I bought a house. So that kind of real life stuff meant that we paused for various points. But we recorded most of it last year, didn't we?
Yeah, it was all in 2022 that was recorded. I think we did bits and pieces maybe January of this year.
Well, vocals went on into this year, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because as I say, because I was kind of Johnny last. The lads had already Joe had done all of his in what, September, October, Joe.
It was a while back, but there was a kind of thing with this record though that, as I kind of hang up from the lockdown, there was really severe waiting times for vinyls and stuff. So even if we kind of wanted to kind of finish the record very quickly, at the end of 2022, we wouldn't have really been able to get it out any time before now anyway.
Yeah, the label were very clear that it was going to be like a 9 month delay between
Wow.
handing it in and getting it released. So that's what we've been doing really. Like we handed it in at the start of this year, like or 6 months or something, or 7 months or something like that. So yeah, we handed it in early this year, and we've been kind of making videos and getting things ready and stuff since then.
Wow. So I heard this is the weirdest album the band has ever put out. Now I'm curious, what makes this record stand out from the rest of the discography?
What do you think, JR?
We have probably what stands out. Probably just we have kind of guests, you could say, on the album that we never had before, and they're kind of left field as well. Most bands, you kind of get a guest guitar player, vocalist. It's kind of someone that's a little bigger than them, and they kind of come in because they're asked to, not because they want to or they're interested. They're kind of just
Yeah,
like, okay, but we got people that actually were interested in doing it and totally left field as well, not in their style. So it's kind of, that's probably what's different, and
yeah,
most do that, particularly in our genre anyway.
and I think it's of course we can see a lot of shades of grey where other people don't because we write the music, but I think it's definitely our most varied album. It's our most diverse musically. Like it has a tune or two that are like hard rock songs on it, and then it has punk stuff. It has thrash metal. It almost has some like groovy little things on it as well. And it has some quite eccentric choices put in there. And like my take on it is that it's very ballsy. It came out of a place of being very comfortable. The last record we pushed the boat out a little bit in terms of the songwriting. That was well received, and I think that made us much more ballsy about doing it again. And I think as well, I don't know, maybe I don't know what you think, lads, but I think getting older has been part of that too. We're less concerned about constantly having to hit the same button, um, and hit the same mark and sound the same all the time. And I think that's been quite freeing. It has definitely made it more interesting for me, being given like a song like "Bats in Your Hair" or Dream Stealer. it's very interesting to sing songs like that. They're different, you know. Egyptron's a very different kind of song to sing than most of our stuff. So yeah, I don't know. What say you, Joe?
Yeah, like I guess like having a wider range of influences is really what it is. In the past, I guess we kind of talked about this a little bit. You would get your influences secondhand. So instead of being overtly Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, we would have been overtly Agent Steel or, you know, Hellstar kind of thing, you know. Whereas, like, I think we feel a little more comfortable now being all like, okay, let's put a Dio type bit in here, or let's try and do something kind of different. Because some of the kind of reviews we've been seeing as well, people are kind of saying that this doesn't sound like the sort of thing that should work for Gama Bomb, doing something that's more like hard rock, heavy metal in places. But, you know, like, if the option for us is to start writing really slow, boring thrash songs or to start writing upbeat, heavy metal songs, we'll start doing that instead, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And it feels like we did fit that stuff. And you know, we're always saying this, but ultimately it's about what pleases us and makes us happy. And we've found that if we're doing stuff that entertains each other and pleases each other, we're very lucky now that we have a group of fans, you know, people who are all around the world who tend to like it when we're doing that stuff. You know, we're quite lucky in that way. If we do something that works for us, there's a pretty good chance that group of people will dig it. And that's what matters really, you know? Like
Totally.
we're not out there trying to write sad but true and, you know, smash the mainstream or whatever it is, you know, like that's for other bands to try to do. You know, we're trying to keep ourselves happy, number one, and please the people who will like it, number two, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And that's so interesting to hear because it makes sense because you guys have such a consistently good discography. And you see like a lot of those first wave of thrash bands kind of fall off. They kind of did in like the 90s and whatnot, where I feel like you guys have been so consistent because you're not afraid to experiment and do your own thing. And as a fan, it's really awesome to see, you know,
That's
because
cool.
it's not like let's just try to recapture, you know,
Yeah, and look, I mean,
early 2000 stuff.
Like case in point, man, you're saying things like you guys have been experimenting. I think the vast majority of people who have heard more than one record by our band probably wouldn't even realize there is any variation there. You know, they probably think it's the same thing each time. So that in itself is quite heartening to hear. Yeah, I don't know, like all those bands in the 90s and stuff, we get asked about that a lot, you know, because when we were younger, we made such a big deal out of talking about, oh, bands in the 90s taught us what not to do and stuff. You know, I suppose any band who's been around for a long time are going to have dips. By our standards, we think we have records that aren't as good as other ones, and we have songs that we would never play live and songs that we laugh about and we think are crap. So I suppose it just maybe we were lucky that the genre was already half dead and we were out of the glare of public scrutiny for the vast majority of our mistakes.
I get like
You know what I mean?
that. Yeah.
You know, Force of Habit come out when everybody was looking. You know, speak between the lines, no one was looking. So we can say whatever the fuck we want. You know?
Part of it though is also that, like, I think a lot of our contemporaries, aside from, you know, making whatever choices that, you know, they couldn't continue, you know, the way that we did, where we could make an album every couple of years, was that I think what happens a lot of bands is after you make 2 or 3 records, you end up having some sort of legal disputes or label disputes, because bands usually sign records when they're young and dumb. And then whenever they're into it, it's either a case of, right, do you want to try and grow up a little bit and sort out our finances and all and get this, or do you want to just break up? And I think that's what happens a lot of bands, or a lot of our contemporaries anyway.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, this record, Bats, is coming out on Prosthetic Records. What's it like working with that label?
Great. They're very chill. EJ, who owns the label, has been a fan of the band since about 2008. And he just kind of came out of the woodwork. I saw him on Twitter. And I was like, oh, it's the guy who wants Prosthetic. And I just DM'd him and I was like, oh, we're looking for a label. And he was like, I've been a fan for years. And it was just, you know, he's a true believer. You know, he loves metal and he loves metal that doesn't take itself too seriously. And luckily we fit in the middle of that Venn diagram. So he had always been there in the shadows somehow, keeping an eye on us. And then it was really good. on an individual level, we get on very, very well. So there's a nice collegial kind of relationship to it. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't times where you're not butting heads about marketing this or selling that or money for this, but like, yeah, they're very cool. Like, they have a punk ethos that I like, and they're not money grabbing bastards, which I really like, because we have dealt with that before too.
Yeah. It's so nice, man, because like you like I've talked to enough like new wave of British heavy metal bands and the whole like neat records thing. It's so nice that we like finally live in an age where like labels actually help bands, and like actually support them. I feel like back then it used to just be the worst.
We've definitely had. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Just quick freeze, real quick. You're back, I think.
Sorry, is it okay now?
Yeah. Right. Oh no.
Sorry. You guys talk.
Okay.
The internet's acting the door.
What's cool about labels now, I think it's run by fans now, because like labels obviously, like, over the last 20 years, there wasn't much money to be made. So anyone who has a label now is pretty much a fan of the music, rather than kind of, trying to capitalize on something that's current, even though there was never that much money to be made in music, but still. And making albums is much cheaper now. Like, there's no bands that kind of need a budget of 100 grand to make an album now. So, making albums is way, way cheaper. The gear and everything else is way cheaper. So I think it's down, like, the fans now are kind of more into setting up labels rather than kind of, the team of accountants and lawyers and stuff like that. It's really cool, I think. I that's the way I just looked at, for some reason I saw like Roadrunner, and just an example, like, they only have like about 12 bands on the roster now. That's like fuck all compared to what they used to have. Even all those metal labels from the 90s, they don't have a lot of bands anymore. So a lot of kind of indie labels now are taking up bands that are probably fans of the bands or fans of the music. I think they're taking it up now. So that's really good, I think.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's like when we were growing up, record deal, especially the town we grew up in, getting signed on a record deal was like the golden fleece. It was like you would have heard of the band who got signed from your town. There was an like a rock band called The Four of Us, and they were a signed band. I think they were actually in Universal. They were on a proper label back in the 90s. And when we were growing up, that was the band who got signed. So it was very much the be all and end all. The nature of record labels has changed. Everything else. I think that the meaning of that has changed. I don't think it's as hard to get signed now, because it kind of doesn't mean the same thing. But for us, obviously getting signed initially to Lyric Records way back, like 16 years ago now, that was a massive deal for us. And, it really changed things for us. So, like, it's a funny thing. It is a relationship, being with a record deal. It's literally a relationship. The interpersonal relationships and the nature of the deal that you have with them shapes everything. And we're quite lucky that we're kind of on a happy third marriage now, like Ringo or whatever. I know he's still married to Barbara Bach, isn't he? Yeah. So we're kind of we're more like Paul. Like, we're on our third marriage now and everything's going great. So
yeah. So it's been quite a long way since that first release. How much do you feel the band's creative process has changed since the first album?
In some ways, quite a lot, but in other ways, not really at all. Because at the end of the day, it always comes back to, what should we write a song about? And here's some riffs that everybody likes. Now, back in the day, obviously, it was sitting face to face with each other, drinking a few beers, and now we kind of tend to do a lot of it online. But I think we've got better at it. A lot of the time back in the day, you were kind of stabbing at the dark. So you would have more songs and albums that you weren't happy with. And I think over the years, that's got less and less, I think the last couple of records, everybody has actually liked all the songs on them,
It was probably a bit more punky back in the day, because, as you said, we were in a garage doing it, or we were in your house doing it. And we weren't probably filtering things as much. You probably had like 6 tunes that would pull together out of the whole gang of us, and we would go, right, that's it, that's the 6 songs. You know, like when we made Survival of the Fastest, with the exception of I think 2 songs that had been on a demo, it was every song that we'd ever written. You know,
Wow.
so, you know, which tends to be the way with young bands or any band when they're starting, is the first album represents everything you've done right up until that point. You know, very few bands are self-selecting. So if you take something like Survival of the Fastest, we wrote that over the course of like a year, I guess, and then we got it all recorded, or maybe that was 2 years we were writing that. But then you look at this album, you look at Bats, we wrote 30 demos for that album. You know, more like 2.5 albums worth of music.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and like, you know, various states of undress. But yeah, like a huge amount of music written for it. Everybody pumping music into it. Everybody feeding back on almost every aspect of it as well. So we're much more critical, more selective. And I think the muscle is there now. The muscle is more built up. We're not intimidated by wrangling a song into shape or ditching it if it's not working, you know. So yeah, it's probably it's more just we're kind of experienced in doing it now, which is a mad thing to say because I don't think anybody ever expected us to go that far. Including us. I don't think we expected it, you know.
I feel like that's like pretty much every thrash band. Like they get to a point and they're like, I can't believe we're still doing this.
Anyway,
Do you guys how far into the future are you guys looking? Do you have like any like very long-term goals, or is it just album to album?
what are your goals, lads?
Let's figure it out right here.
I'll
I
put
think
some coal on the fire.
we're lucky because you can see bands that kind of like they rely on the band in some way as a means of some sort of financial, to make money or something. And we obviously like to make, some money if it's possible, But there's like the gain is like writing good songs. I think that the goal is to write good songs that we all like as a band and to play and travel to cool places. That's probably the goal right now. We don't need to do like 3-week long tour in a van anymore, even though we've done all that. We did actually like 10 days in the UK. That's enough for in one stretch. But I think it's like what's important is just write songs we all like and play in cool places, travel to cool places.
Yeah, and it's
Enjoy.
funny, Brandon, like when you were saying what are your long-term goals, I think over a beer, the kind of goals we talk about aren't like, oh, we really want to play the Royal Albert Hall. Our goals are things like, let's get back to Japan, let's tour America again, we've never played in Greece, let's go to Greece. What would it be like to play in Australia? That would be great, you know. We talk about that kind of thing. And then sometimes the goals are creative as well. We're like, wouldn't it be cool to have a song like this? And, you know, we don't massively hang a lot of weight on that. We're kind of just going from record to record and doing what satisfies us. But yeah, like we always talk about the idea of, you know, gigging as adventures. You know, we're going to Mexico this Christmas, like this December, to play a big festival, and that's an adventure, you know. And it's things like that we value. I suppose I do think about it sometimes. Most of the members of the band are now north of 40. JR is the only baby in the band. I turned 40 this year, and I think it does make you wonder a bit about the future. It's like, right, well, how long can you do this? But I got to be honest, like we just did a 10-day UK tour. We're not in an insane rush to do another 10-day tour anytime soon, but we came out of it really well. We came out of it in good shape. We sounded really good. Like nobody burst themselves, nobody screwed themselves up, nobody got ill. And it's like, okay, well, actually, if we can maintain it like this, I think I could probably do this for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't smoke or anything. I think I could probably do this when I'm 60, maybe.
We still get offers all the time for playing places. So it's, we're not skint, for offers and stuff. We're more kind of, oh, that's cool. Let's go there.
Yeah. And in a weird way, it's almost like the last 6 or 7 years, especially because Domo and I have had children and everyone in the band obviously has done things with their lives. It's almost like this bit now, the last few albums has been the very busy bit for us in terms of our real lives. Whereas I think in like 10 years, we're going to be much freer, you know, like, so we might gig a lot more in 10 years. And we sometimes say that to each other as well, you know. It could be that we'll be out doing big, mad, long American and Canada tours then because no one's looking for us at home. That might be the case. And I suspect that we have toured with several veteran thrash bands who were at that point, you know. where
Yeah.
suddenly nobody cared if they were home on Saturday morning or whatever, you know.
That's kind of part of the weird thing to think about is, that landscape in 20 years' time when probably a lot of bands like Testament or Anthrax and stuff aren't really going to be there, And there is a kind of bit of a generational gap in thrash, isn't there? Because there's that period in the 90s where there weren't a lot of new bands, so we could end up being sort of the old folks before we kind of know it, really,
Yeah, like, and I'm only bringing this up because it kind of chimes with what you're saying there, particularly with this record and with the UK tour that we did. By almost a default, you see people use, like, in the kind of promo material or in journalism and stuff, people have been kind of using words like legends or legendary, and you're like, yeah, but we're not legends. Legends are people who have, a great degree of success and cultural impact, like, but people are using that because we have existed for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you have found that weird, lads, but that's definitely been a thing this year that never
I think
was.
it's like consistency pays off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
But it didn't pay off for 20 years. For like 20 years, this is the crazy thing. For like 20 years, we were making the same record over and over, and people were like, here come these jokers again. And now we're like very slightly different record, and people are like, oh, the consistency is insane. And you're like, Jesus, I can't win with these people.
No, I totally hear it. And you guys, it's so interesting to hear from you guys. Now, Gama Bombs is third wave of thrash metal.
I suppose
I believe. Yeah, third wave. Now, what is your relationship with the other bands that started in the 2000s?
Hold on one sec. What's this? Who's in the second wave? Is that like Exhorder or something, or what's the second wave?
I believe it's like more 90s.
Right.
It's
So
like, is Nuclear
thrash.
Assault wave or is Nuclear Assault first wave?
Nuclear Assault be first wave.
First wave, I guess. Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe like Zentrix is second wave.
Like bands who had debut albums coming out at the end of the 80s, early 90s, like Annihilator and whatnot, would be second wave, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, like Hellstar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, as far as our relationship, like with our contemporaries, we've never really had any problems. And there's some of the bands kind of like Bonded by Blood, where when people are talking about their favorite band or the band that they've seen live the most amount of times, you're like, I think I've seen those guys like about 80 times, or Evil or Overkill probably 50 or 60 times. So we've never really had a bad word to say about any of our contemporaries. We've always got on great.
I think, like, to be totally honest, I think back in the day with the Earache stuff, I was very envious of Evil. Evil got signed first, and they were contemporaries of ours. But I suppose the sort of the accessibility or the Metallica and Slayer kind of influence on their music, and maybe the straight faced nature of it at that time, it meant they were twice as big as us. And I used to really take that to heart. Like back in the noughties, I used to like take that very personally, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And because neither of us have penis-shaped swimming pools as a result of our creative efforts. But yeah, so like I think back then I felt very competitive about it. Not that it ever extended to anything personal. We always actually have been very good friends with them. It was more I used to just beat myself up about other people's successes or perceived successes.
It never ever occurred to me, because anytime I ever heard like something like Evil or Warbringer where it sounded a bit more like Slayer or Metallica, I could automatically tell why people were going to like that more than this thing that sounded like, Nuclear Assault or Agent Steel or something like that. You're like, okay, that band's really big and this band's a lot smaller, so.
Yeah, that's it. We were taking our cues from also Rams, like, so yeah, our relationship with all those bands is very good. Like, some will know better than others. We wouldn't have a huge relationship with someone like Municipal Waste, but we've met them. They're really nice. And I think especially as I've gotten older, I've sort of, or maybe as we've all gotten older, some of those relationships have become a lot closer, with the likes of Kevil from Warbringer or All from Evil, or, even younger bands. James from Hellripper would be a buddy of mine. And, it's really nice. Like, it's almost as if once the heat has gone out of the competition, it's actually really nice to just be pals, But yeah, like, it's really interesting to think back now that this genre was sort of dead and gone, and that a relatively small group of people have to bring back You know, I always marvel at the fact that Metallica have been trying to make thrash albums for years now. You know, like they've been
Yeah.
trying making thrash music, and it's not just because of us, but it's because of us and some other people. Not a very large number of other people, probably about 70 other people. You know.
Yeah, I think it definitely did help too that like you guys were just all so spread out. All the bands were like the first wave, like mainly in the Bay Area, which is why I think a lot of them just hated each other and still kind of do.
Yeah, but
Um,
yeah.
like you did have that you guys started in that sweet spot between like that transition from like physical media to streaming, and now I feel like streaming has completely taken over. What is your opinion on just the domination streaming has had on the music industry as a whole?
I love it.
It's you love it. Go on, JR, give us your thoughts there.
I don't know, because like I just like, when if I didn't have, like, say, Spotify, I wasn't like subscribed to Spotify, I wouldn't have like probably discovered half the bands I like now. Like,
Same.
like I like, there's so many bands that you can just discover because of Spotify, and I love it. And I would, like, if it was gone tomorrow and like there's no more Spotify, you had to buy a CD, I'd be just pissed off.
Yeah, no, I love it on a personal level. You know, we all make playlists all the time and send them to each other and stuff. And I was, even before I had Spotify for years, I used to use YouTube for music because you can find so much amazing obscure music of every genre on it, and it's like a time machine for music. So like obviously I love it on a personal level. It's a double-edged sword on a band level because we, for a band of our size, we actually have really good streaming numbers. Like our Spotify numbers are amazing compared, like we're one of the larger Irish bands full stop on Spotify, apart from like massive bands like Hosier or fucking U2 or whatever. We're actually one of the bigger bands. And like that's amazing, but it doesn't really make you money, you know, like due to the
Yeah.
various arrangements you have and due to the sort of legacy the legacy fallout of record labels dictating large upfront money from those streaming platforms when they first started out. So you can't really make a lot of money off it. But a lot of people can hear your stuff. Like we have a few songs, quite a few songs that are over 2 million now on Spotify, and that's great. That's lots of people hearing you, and you know all you have to do is get in front of them and see if they might buy a T-shirt or something or come and see a show. So, like it's good. You have to play things where they lie, you know.
I think probably the best thing about it is definitely like the exposure of people who would never hear your music getting into your band, you know? And like it's all about goodwill these days, you know, because people, like all of us generally, probably don't really buy and listen to CDs the way that we kind of did back in the day. So, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to support a band by going and buying CDs or vinyls maybe, but it probably would, buying them, you know, a beer or buying T-shirts. And it's something on the UK tour, you know, back in the day, it would kind of, you're nearly having to reason with somebody why they should buy a T-shirt, whereas people were kind of coming up and spending 70 quid, you know,
Yeah,
very
that's
happily,
true.
which
That's
is
true.
great. You know, it goes to show that people are willing to support the band and pat you on the back that way, which is better because like whenever we were selling significant amounts of CDs and stuff like that, we were never seeing any of that money either, you know. So
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Like you would get a statement from a record label that was like you sold 2 or 3 thousand copies, but like that was all X'd out in a big red column, you know, set against the cost of drums and the booze you drank and that time that they flew you somewhere. And it's like, yeah, like I did notice that on the UK tour for sure. People were coming up and as for want of a better word, as gestures of love, people were buying the merch. And they were almost overt about it. People were like, I want to buy 2 T-shirts and I want to buy a patch because I like you guys. And that's really cool. There's a way forward in that, you know. Um, like the industry is really weird, but as a friend of mine said, they wouldn't be working with you if they weren't making money. So the industry still exists, and people do still make money in it, you know. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, like for us, that's never been the number one thing for a long time, man. For like 12 years of being in the band, we weren't remotely interested in making sure we had our merch game on and that we were sorted out with our publishing and all these other things. We were just we were really, really just in it for the fun for the longest time, you know. And I think that is why we didn't break up. You know, our expectations were realistic. We wanted to have a bit of crack with each other, and we wanted to travel, and we wanted to be creative. And I
Yep.
think leaning on that was the main thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Tales from the Grave in Space was released for free by Earache, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel that, like, looking back at that from like 2009, do you feel that helped or hurt the band?
Massively helped.
Massively helped us in a gigantic way. You know, like remember like talking about it and saying it really changed us from being a European thrash band to a band who were known all over the world, and it was around then that we could start touring all over the world. You know, so it really really expanded things, and kind of hard for people to kind of appreciate now because of what Spotify and streaming is, and the fact that you can listen to nearly everything for free at any stage. Back in at that stage, it was a huge gesture of goodwill on our part, but also a massive risk on the label's part. And Billy be able to like talk to you about what that conversation was like with Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it was very easy. We played a show in London in a bar called the Old Blue Last in Shoreditch in 2008, and or 2007 even. Geez, I don't know. What year was Citizen Brain in 2007?
2008.
2009.
It must have been,
2000.
it must have been that year. You're right there, Joe. It must have been the start of that year, and the guys from Era came to the show, and we sat down in a booth downstairs, and I remember saying to them, "Look, we'll have this idea. We want to give away the next album as a free download, like let people listen to it for free, because there wasn't even streaming. Streaming didn't really exist then. We're like, it has to be a download." And they were like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." And we were like, "We'll make it a marketing thing. That'll be the whole thing." Because the feeling that I had, or that we had at the time, was we had made two records. We had made one record ourselves, which had been released by a small German label. We'd made one record for a proper record label where we'd gone away and recorded in a cottage for a month, and it was all quite rock and roll. They had money for beer and all this kind of thing. And then we were doing it again, and it was very hard to see how it could be different. It was like, we're just going to do this again. It's going to be another record. It's going to come out the same way. It's probably going to be the same size. So we kind of needed something that was going to blow it apart a bit. And that idea was the tool that we used. So that was great. And like, we still meet people. Again, UK was last week. We met people on that tour who were like, "Yeah, I got a copy of your album for free with Metal Hammer in 2009. And they've been a fan of the band ever since." And it works for the record label too. We outsold the album before that on CD and vinyl whenever it was released, because it wasn't just for free. It was also, we could also buy it. So yeah, that was good. We were pretty smart to do it, to be honest. It's weird now though, because as Joe says, things have moved on so much. It doesn't seem like an outrageous thing to do anymore. But
it was a cool thing as well, because around that time, it was like the resurgence of the iPod and phones. You could put MP3s on your phone, so it was very clever. Like like people who had like iPods and MP3 players, they were way bigger. Like they were more popular then. Like you could store like discographies of bands on iPods and MP3 players. So having like a download where people can, what the goal is really is just people to listen to the album rather than just sell the album. It's better to like 250,000 people listen to your album rather than say 5,000 people just buy the copy. Which
yeah, we were banking on that. I remember at the time, even in like the press that we did for it, we said things like, "Oh, if people want to buy a T-shirt or support us by buying the CD later," we actually were already kind of thinking in the terms we were just talking about there. We kind of realized that there was more to it than just people streaming it, or we hoped there was anyway, because there was so little money in the traditional deal for us. But yeah, that was good. It almost, man, it's so long ago. I almost feel like we're talking about different people. 14 years ago.
Yeah.
I know I was an idiot at the time. And still am.
Yeah, well, I think everything's looking good. Like, even for you, it's been like so long since the whole vocal surgery thing. That used to be like a huge talking point, and now it's, what was that, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I had the operation
now?
I think in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big relief.
How much has that changed your like approach and view to singing?
100 bazillion percent. I didn't have an approach and a view. Paid the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was approaching singing the way Joe was playing the bass, the way Luke was approaching the guitar. Probably not Paul. Paul took the drums very seriously from the start, and Damo probably took the guitar quite seriously, and so did JR. But everybody else we were just fucking throwing it at the wall. We were not looking after ourselves. We weren't really practicing. We weren't really being serious about what we were doing. Am I right in saying that, Joe? We were just kind of messing all the way through. Like, so there was no warming up or anything like that. So it was all quite, in
Wow.
that sense, quite reckless. It was almost as if the music was the afterthought and we were there to drink and be crazy and whatever. And it was almost anathema to have earplugs or warm up or whatever it was. So my accident was definitely caused by that. And as it was real dark night of the soul as a result of that, having to get myself back to the point where I could actually sing and speak properly. And that was a very long road. I sort of resigned myself to the fact that it wasn't ever going to come back. And, you know, a combination of that plus time, because it had been a couple of years since the operation. It took me about 4 years, 5 years maybe. Like the operation, I hurt myself in like 2011. And then I was able to do high notes again when we made Speed Between the Lines, 2017. You know, so yeah, and so my approach has changed totally. And now, you know, I don't smoke. I try not to drink too much before gigs. I try to have good habits around singing. I warm up. I've been to an opera teacher. I'll train up before I go and do a tour. I consider how I'm going to sing songs. I know more about how to work with the PA. I have my own mic. You know, like I don't stay up really late. I don't go to places where I have to scream over the music. So yeah, like those things really add up. And I think it shows, you know. I think I've been very lucky. Me and Joe were doing a chat the other night with someone, and I was saying like the injury that I had, lots of really famous singers have never come back from that. Like lots of people who are much more important than I am never come back. Julie Andrews got a polyp. That's what I had. And Julie Andrews is fucking, you know, she's one of the most famous singers of the 20th century. Like, and she can't sing. Literally cannot fucking sing a note ever again because she had it. So, you know, do you know what I mean? Mary fucking Poppins can't sing because of it. So I've been very lucky that I got it back. And through the process of doing it, I also learned that I had other things that I could use in my voice. So that was very lucky.
Yeah, especially singing like thrash metal too, you know.
The problem with thrash, or one of the cool things about thrash, is there's no time to think. There's no time for big fancy Dan stuff, you know. Like Dylan can put the emotion in all day because he has like 10, 15 seconds to sing one line. You know, it's like I'd like to see Adele sing some of this shit and see what people think. You know, like,
me too.
Yeah, when you have all day to sing 4 notes, it's grand, you know. Whereas this stuff, it's like you can barely breathe in before you have to say 10 things. Or at least that's how I've always felt about it.
Yeah, and like even I saw on YouTube some of the bootleg stuff some people recorded of your shows, and you guys are just so tight and so good. Do you have any interest in putting out like an official live album at any point in the band's career?
I think our reaction to this has always been to sort of go, I sharp intake that. Yeah, would you be happy with live album?
Live album would be cool, but it's a lot of work, man. To do something that, like, do people really care about live albums anymore? I don't know. Like, there's only about a handful of like amazing live albums, and you could name them right now, like, you know, Live and Dangerous, you know, the Judas Priest in the East or whatever it was, Queen live at Wembley, you know, a few of them. But bands, you know, I think the only the live album that like from a metal band is like the Iron Maiden Live After Death and Decade of Aggression from Slayer. They're the only ones that like people actually talk.
Decade of Aggression was pretty good, but it's such a hard thing to do. Something I think we'd love to do, and again, it's a bit of a dead format. Is like, you know, doing an old school type VHS type thing.
That'd be sick.
Follow the band around on tour for a day, and you know, watch us get drunk, and then like maybe all have like head cams on for the gig so that we can, you know, have it as like a full 3D type thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and do those do you know the way at the start of all those concert movies that interview a few of the people outside? The band are just so amazing. It's like there's no division in the band and the audience. It's there. And fucking Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Madonna fucking sucks.
Heavy metal rules.
Madonna's punk sucks. I love the way you But where do you
There's
get?
there's one part in the heavy metal parking lot. If you watch it again, there's like, "How old are you?" And like the guy's like 21, and then he's with his girlfriend. I was like, "How old are you?" 14. I was like, "What?"
Well, that's those lads in America whose car had a big Thunderbird on the bonnet.
Yeah.
That's who that is. All right, all right.
Definitely like those goddamn Duke boys.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little girl down to see Judas Priest. All right, all right, all right.
He's got the cigarettes and up at the top.
Introduce you to good friend Dave Holland. All right, all right.
Reminds me of home. Now, on tour, what is it like between gigs? Like, does it get like really crazy? Like, what is the tour life with Gama Bomb?
We do have stories. We have funny stories. But the UK tour was quite tame. But we do have funny stories. We played in a brewery in Newcastle, and that was an experience. There's this home like this brewing kind of local brewing company, and they brew beer and they produce cans and stuff like that. And they also have a venue, and it's a really good venue. It's in a kind of a warehouse, and like they do fill it up like it's like about 400 capacity. But when we went backstage, we saw this like these creative like just aluminium cans, just like no label, no nothing. And like, what are these? Are these just like faulty, gone off beers? Like, no. They're like, dude, good beer. It's just they didn't fill up to the top properly, or they're perfect. And we're like, oh, all right, really? And he goes, yeah, you can have one. Oh, can I have one? It's like, yeah. I'll take the whole lot if you want. Like, we can't sell them.
Wow.
So we took all the cans and we filled the whole van with cans. The back of the seat, just
Holy
all
shit.
cans.
And we drank every single one of them as well.
I'd say we took about 80 cans out of the place.
Yeah.
We're fucking, by the end of the tour, we drank every single one of them. And they were amazing. It was a posh microbrewery. The beers were delicious, all different varieties.
Yeah, it was really good. It was like these.
So like when we get a chance, we will still absolutely do the wrong thing. That's 100% guaranteed.
But like back in the day, I think part of the deal is now we're much better at saying, okay, there's 12 gigs, let's take it easy this evening and we'll go crazy tomorrow or whatever. But I think back in the day, we didn't really know to do that. So a lot of things like where Philly would hurt his voice, it was because we'd be in the Reaper Barn at 3 a.m. screaming and singing Tom Jones and stuff like that. Wake up the next day, being sore, actually,
That's a true story. We were in the Reaper Barn with Bonded by Blood, and we went round all these different pubs, and we'd been screaming our heads off for a week. And the last pub that we went to was playing Tom Jones. And I have an awful weakness for Tom Jones. And I started screaming. And then we got back to the bus and I was all like, so yeah, like back in the day, definitely, we were talking about it on the UK tour this time because this one was definitely the sensible grown-up version of that, where at night time we might cut loose more if the show was a really good one and tomorrow wasn't a big drive, we would kind of cut loose, drinking and having the crack and talking rubbish until the wee hours. But we were talking about back in the day, we would be at like 2 p.m. in the van going to the next show, and the windows would be down and we'd all be smoking joints. Everyone would be drinking beer. Everyone would be drinking beer at 2 o'clock, and we wouldn't be playing until 11 at night. And be there. Now, to be fair, when we go and play festivals, we still do that.
Yeah.
Tell them about arriving in Belgium story, because
that's just not that long ago. It's only about 2 years ago, is it? Or no, is it longer?
We did a Belgium show with it was around like this time in 2016. I think Eva were playing that night. Anyway, the van driver picked us up and got us in the van, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's beer and stuff." And I don't know, we had some hash. I think it was hash. And it's like, yeah, it's fine. So he's like, "Oh, let's smoke up." Say again?
They supplied a whole bunch of weed as well as the beer.
They supplied okay, we're rolling up and smoking away and like, yeah. And like literally, we were driving after about 25 minutes driving.
We're like smashing cans. We're starting and we're having, and it's about 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m.
Oh my God.
Smashing cans, absolutely smashing the cans, screaming and laughing, telling stories. We're on holiday, right? It's like a boys' holiday, and suddenly they've handed you a load of beer and weed when you get off the plane. So like, we're in the car screaming and laughing. The car's full of smoke. And then we go around this corner. We're driving down like, like a rural motorway thing. And he just turns off to the right, I don't know, to go through this village or whatever. And the instant he turns off to the right into this village, there's army men. Right?
Oh my
And the army
God.
men are like holding their little machine guns, their little tip bag hats, and they're like standing there, and the van slows right down and pulls up beside them. And we're all like, look at this guy, and we're literally like, sticking it into your mouth or whatever. The guy pulls open the side door of the van, smoke rolls out like the new Pope. And we're all sitting in the back of the van like, hey, nothing, we're not doing anything, hi, And then the guy in the front is speaking Flemish or whatever, and he starts trying to rat us to the soldiers. And we know he's trying to rat us. He's all like, and he's pointing at us, and we're like, whoa, hold on. We thought we were all pals, And the soldiers, like, what do you got there and stuff? And we're like, nothing, we haven't got anything. And then I think they decided it wasn't worth it because it was 11 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, somebody did like throw something or something, and then we just drove on. It was something like,
He opens the door van and he just pops his head in and he goes,
I guess smoky. One of the best ones was we were on a European tour one time in the winter in an RV, and we were hanging up all our like, you try to wash your socks, but then like they can't get dry because it's so cold all the time. We hung them up like in the little top cupboards, in an RV, you have the little cupboards up above for storing stuff. You'd like close the cupboard with them hanging down, right? And we were crossing over into Italy, and the Carabinieri, like the military police, are stopping us. And we're all sitting at the little booth in the back of the RV trying to look nice because we had hash in the seat, wasn't it? There was a load of hash in the seat. And we're sitting at the table, all hands on the table, like pulled upright, nice smiles. The Carabinieri opens the back door. He's talking to the driver, boopity boppity boopity, he's talking to the driver, right? And then the driver's like, he needs all your passports. And we're like, yep. And we'll pass them all out through the front. And we're all sitting at the table going, okay, look nice. And then he comes round to the back door and he opens the door and he takes off his little pillbox hat and he leans in really dramatically to take a look around. And as he leans in, his face goes straight into the wet socks that are hanging off the cupboard above him.
Oh my God.
Like a car wash. Like a wet sock to the face. And he does the most amazing double take, like, like, can you imagine? A fussy Italian policeman, Jesus Christ, he probably went up all night and gets these wet socks in the face and the look of absolute horror on his face, and he just slowly reversed without saying anything, just reversed out of the RV and closed the door. And we were like,
doesn't get paid enough.
Doesn't get paid enough. So like, yeah, like we still misbehave, we go and play festivals and we'll drink quite a bit.
Think about festivals. Some of them have like, particularly the ones in Belgium and the Netherlands, they always give like little small cups, like half the size of these, and they're like, "Oh yeah, just bring the cup and we'll fill you." They always have a kind of a couple of kegs, and so that kind of ends a bit like, "Okay, I'll have one. Oh, I'll have another one."
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
like 8 drinks later.
Yeah, one of the recent festivals. One of the recent festivals was like a real flashback to back in the day because we played the show, we went walking around to talk to people, and then we met these dudes who were like, come out to the camping field, like the parking camping. So we walked out of the festival to this field where all these people had parked up their RVs and their cars and everything. And man, these guys had like a rental van and the music and amazing beer and smoke and everything, and we like just hung around drinking and listening to Dio in a field. And it was exactly like something we would have done 15 years ago.
Very cool.
Still, we
wow.
can when we get a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing stories. So fun. I expected something like that. Honestly,
well, there's a lot of worse things have happened, but we're not going to start saying them on podcast. Fair
enough. Now, you guys are probably going to play a lot of shows with the release of Bats. Very, very exciting. How do you guys go about putting together like a set list for a show?
It definitely gets more difficult really as time goes on, just because again you've got 8 albums and you know, like no matter what band you're into in the world, people just have a thing where really the first 4 albums, you know, really, I think people would like to see, you know, half the set at least being from that kind of era. So it gets more of a mission to try and say, okay, this album, are we only going to do 1 song from it? Are we going to do 2 songs from this record? But like we're kind of lucky that a lot of our songs are short, so our set is always around an hour long, so we can do about 20 songs. So but yeah, as far as breaking them up, John, like what do you think is, how do we decide that?
Do you know what? I think what I really feel fortunate is that we still play songs from every album. And some bands, they kind of just, like, you know who they are. And they kind of just pick the song, they pick the set list, and it's the same set list over and over. And, you know, it kind of gets a bit tiring. But I feel appreciate that we actually do, like, appreciate all the albums, all the previous albums. And for picking songs as well, yeah, it is hard. And you know, there's some people that might like want requests, but luckily we actually know enough songs that, like, and sometimes people will shout something, if we know it, we actually can play it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
It has happened in the past, you know.
And I think we have a good sense of I think we have a good sense of what flies from each album as well, you know.
Yeah.
We're not going picking deep cuts necessarily. And the other thing is our set list is never it's never a full refresh. There'll always be chunks that you carry forward, you know. So the set list for the UK tour had new songs on it. 3 songs we'd never played live before. But it also had ones we'd done before in different orders and stuff, you know. So it's a tricky one. As Joe said, it gets more difficult as you make more records. I think we're going to have to start rehearsing again now after Christmas and get a new set down with more from the new album on it. I think Sea Savage was definitely the biggest change we made to the set in a long time. We added like 5 songs off that album to the set at that time. I think it was like we played loads of it. I feel like
it was nice actually. It was something to kind of like, when you add a lot of songs, it kind of it kind of improves your kind of. Sometimes you can go into autopilot. It's like, okay, I know all these, but like when you actually challenge yourself, okay, you have to learn some songs. It's actually kind of nice and refreshing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like it's tricky. It's tricky having tons of songs, but there are only a certain number anybody wants to hear.
Well, exciting, and it's refreshing as a fan because, you know, Megadeth has had the same set list for like 20 years now.
Anthrax is worse. Anthrax way worse. They play Got the Time and that other antisocial. I don't know why they keep that on the set list. Actually, they've gone home and they have, you know, never play those songs. I don't know why. It's just annoying.
Yeah, it's a lot of those early thrash bands, and I wish more bands had the similar belief as you guys, like keeping something from every album, you know, a little taste of everything, you know, get the whole experience of the band. It's really, really awesome to see. And this new album is very exciting. Bats cannot wait to listen to it. What's the best way for people to stay in touch with everything Gama Bomb?
Right. You haven't had a chance to listen to it yet?
No.
Yeah, that's a shame. I shall have to berate the record label for not giving you a listen.
Yeah, well, it comes out tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but I mean, your press, you should have heard it already. The guys should have sent you a link. I'll make sure that they get that to you. So look, the best way to keep up with Gama Bomb is to look us up on the socials. We're Gama Thrash on Instagram because Americans are afraid of the word bomb. And we're Gama Bomb on Facebook because Americans aren't paying as much attention to Facebook. Yeah, we're on all those social platforms. Check us out, or just look it up on Spotify or any other streaming place. We're there. We also have a really exciting Wikipedia page.
That's
very, very exciting. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks, man.
Awesome. I'm Brandon Battick, and this is Disturbing the Priest.